Welcome, the anointed ones. Be careful how you treat people. Sometimes you're not dealing with a person, you're dealing with a test. Most people think karma is some slow-moving force that takes years to catch up. Wrong. Sometimes karma doesn't wait. Sometimes it walks into your life wearing human skin, shakes things up, and watches how you respond. That's you. If you've ever wondered why people act strangely around you, why some love you instantly while others seem to despise you for no reason, here's the truth. You are a walking, talking karmic test, a spiritual X-ray machine, a divine audit. Your presence alone reveals who people really are, whether they like it or not. And let's be real, most people don't like it. Studies show that humans are wired to resist change. The brain literally experiences discomfort when faced with something that challenges its existing beliefs. So when you show up radiating truth, depth, and spiritual clarity, people's minds panic. They either embrace the upgrade or self-destruct trying to reject it. Ever had someone dislike you before you even spoke a word? That wasn't personal. That was their soul recognizing you as a test they weren't ready for. But here's where it gets even crazier. The way people treat you determines their own karma. Your presence is an invisible contract. How they handle you shapes their next chapter. Will they rise? Will they fall? That's up to them. So if you've ever felt like you trigger intense reactions, get ready, because what you're about to learn will change how you see yourself forever. Number 1, you are the mirror that exposes hidden rot. Most people live their lives behind a mask, even from themselves. They construct identities based on what they want others to see, not who they truly are. They suppress their flaws, avoid their insecurities, and pretend they have it all figured out. Then you walk into their life, and suddenly that illusion starts to crack. You don't have to say a word or do anything dramatic. Just existing near them forces them to see themselves in a way they were never ready for. And they hate it. That's why some people will dislike you instantly, without reason. It's not because you've wronged them. It's because your energy pulls back the curtain on their carefully crafted self-image. You are a mirror, reflecting back everything they try to ignore. Their dishonesty, their hidden jealousy, their secret fears, their unhealed wounds, things they could comfortably avoid before now stare them right in the face. And instead of dealing with it, they blame you for making them feel that way. They'll convince themselves you're arrogant, difficult, or too much. But that's just their ego panicking. People like to think they're good, honest, and in control. But when you enter the picture, their actions, not their words, tell the real story. Some will embrace what they see and grow. Others will lash out, trying to shatter the mirror instead of facing what it shows them. You were never the problem. You were just the one thing they couldn't lie to. And that terrifies them. This is why your presence alone is enough to shift the energy in a room. Why certain people feel exposed around you, even if you've done nothing to make them feel that way. You don't just walk into people's lives, you reveal them to themselves. And for those who aren't ready to face that truth, you'll always be the villain in the story they tell themselves. Number 2, you disrupt the comfort of lies. People build their entire lives on comfortable lies. They tell themselves they're happy when they're not. They stay in relationships they've outgrown. They follow traditions they don't believe in. They convince themselves that their choices, no matter how unaligned, are the right ones. These illusions create a false sense of security, a world where they don't have to question anything too deeply. Then you show up, and suddenly the cracks start to show. You don't have to say anything. Just your presence, your energy, your way of thinking, the way you move through life, disrupts the carefully crafted stories people tell themselves. You remind them of the truths they've buried. You make them feel the weight of their own compromises. The life they've settled for starts to feel small. Their excuses no longer sound convincing, and that makes you dangerous. People like their illusions because illusions are comfortable. Facing the truth means admitting that they've been lying to themselves, that they've wasted time, that they've been operating from fear instead of purpose. Most people will do anything to avoid that kind of self-confrontation. So when you come along and unknowingly shake the foundation of their false reality, their instinct is to reject you instead of the lie. They'll label you as too much, difficult, or different. Not because you actually are, but because if they acknowledge what you represent, they have to start questioning themselves. Some will silently resent you. Others will try to tear you down, mock you, or make you feel like the outsider. All because deep down, they know they've been living a script instead of their truth, and your existence forces them to realize it. You don't disrupt lives on purpose. You simply are the disruption. And in a world built on comfortable illusions, the truth is the most unwelcome guest. Number 3, you activate their deepest karmic debt. Some people spend years dodging the consequences of their actions, thinking they've escaped the weight of their past. They move through life avoiding accountability, hurting others without remorse, and piling up unresolved karma like a debt they never planned to pay. Then you show up, and suddenly that bill comes due. You don't have to do anything. Just being in their life forces their unresolved past to surface. It's not coincidence. It's energetic law. Your presence acts like a karmic trigger, forcing people to deal with what they've spent years running from. They might not even understand why they feel uneasy around you, why old guilt or shame suddenly resurfaces, or why life seems to take a turn for them after meeting you. But on a deeper level, their soul knows exactly what's happening. They were meant to cross paths with you, and how they handle that moment will determine whether they rise or fall. This is why some people will lash out at you for no apparent reason. You remind them, without trying, that they've been living on borrowed time, that they've gotten away with things they shouldn't have, and that their spiritual debt is finally catching up. They might try to manipulate you, project their guilt onto you, or even turn others against you. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you unknowingly represent the justice they've been avoiding. For those who have lived with integrity, your presence feels different. Instead of panic, they feel alignment. Instead of resistance, they feel recognition. Because karma isn't just about punishment, it's about balance. Those who have done right will see you as a confirmation that they're on the right path. But those who have spent their lives taking, deceiving, or harming, they will feel exposed, unsettled, and desperate to run. You don't bring karma, you activate it, and for some, that's the scariest thing in the world. Number 4, you are the unwanted spiritual upgrade. Growth is uncomfortable. It requires shedding old beliefs, questioning habits, and confronting the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. Not everyone is willing to do that. Some people cling to their struggles like a security blanket, finding comfort in their own suffering. They build entire identities around their pain, their excuses, their bad luck. They don't want a way out. They want validation that staying stuck is justified. Then you come along, and without even trying, you ruin that for them. You are an unwanted spiritual upgrade. Your presence alone shakes up the false stability they've created for themselves. You don't even have to tell them to change. Your energy makes it clear that staying the same is no longer an option. And that terrifies them. Growth means taking responsibility. And responsibility means they can't blame their circumstances, their past, or other people anymore. It means they have to admit that they could do better, and that realization is too heavy for some to carry. This is why people resist you so aggressively. They'll argue, pick fights, or even try to discredit you. Some will try to pull you down to their level, desperate to prove that you're not as evolved as you seem. Others will flat out reject you, cutting you off or making you feel like the enemy. In reality, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting what you represent. You're a fork in the road, a living ultimatum. Evolve or stay the same. Most people don't consciously realize this is happening. They just know they feel uncomfortable around you, that something about you makes them uneasy. But deep down, their soul recognizes the truth. Meeting you means the end of their old ways. And some people would rather fight to stay the same than take a single step toward change. Number 5, you are a living crossroad. People choose their fate through you. Every person you meet is at a spiritual crossroads, whether they realize it or not. Life constantly presents people with choices. Evolve or stay the same, act with integrity or give in to darkness, rise higher or sink deeper. Most of the time, people drift through these choices without thinking. But when they meet you, that decision becomes immediate and unavoidable. You are not just another person passing through their life. You are a catalyst, a moment of truth disguised as a human being. The way someone treats you is not just about the present moment. It's a defining act that sets their karma into motion. If they embrace your energy with humility and respect, their path opens up. If they reject you, betray you, or try to tear you down, they unknowingly seal their fate in ways they won't understand until later. This is why some people's lives seem to spiral downward after mistreating you. It's not a coincidence. It's cause and effect. When they cross paths with you, the universe watches closely. Your presence acts as a spiritual test, and their reaction determines what comes next. Some will rise, inspired by the energy you bring, using it as fuel to grow into their best selves. Others will resist, attack, or try to control you, not realizing that in doing so, they're choosing a path of struggle and decline. What makes this even more profound is that most people will never connect the dots. They'll experience setbacks, failures, or a growing sense of emptiness, but they won't realize that the moment they sealed their fate was when they chose how to handle you. They had a chance to level up, but instead they chose to reject the very thing that could have helped them. You don't have to punish anyone. You don't have to seek revenge. You don't have to do anything at all. The moment they decide how to treat you, the universe takes care of the rest. Number 6. You reveal who's real and who's playing a role. Most people are performers. They wear the right masks, say the right things, and play the part of whatever image they want the world to see. Some act righteous when they're full of hidden resentment. Some act wise when they're just repeating things they don't understand. Some act successful when their confidence is built on insecurity. They've built their lives on appearances, not substance. And then you show up, and everything they've been faking is suddenly at risk of being exposed. You don't even have to call them out. Your presence alone is a threat. Something about you makes them uneasy because deep down they know they are not what they pretend to be. Around you, their polished act starts to slip. They get defensive, irritated, or passive-aggressive, sometimes without even knowing why. It's because, on an energetic level, their spirit recognizes that you can see. Not just the image they put out, but who they really are underneath. The ones who have done the inner work will feel an immediate connection to you. They won't see you as a threat because they have nothing to hide. They've already stripped away their false layers so your energy feels like home to them. But the ones still clinging to their illusions, they will resist you, envy you, or even try to sabotage you. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because standing next to you makes them realize how much of their life is a performance. This is why some people who claim to be good, spiritual, or righteous will turn on you the fastest. Their entire identity depends on being seen a certain way, and your existence makes that harder to maintain. You don't expose them on purpose. They expose themselves by how they react to you. They could choose to grow, to step into authenticity, but most won't. It's easier to reject the mirror than to face what it shows them. You are a reality check. You don't just meet people, you reveal them. Number 7. You trigger their hidden insecurities and deepest wounds. Most people are experts at running from themselves. They bury their insecurities under achievements, relationships, or distractions. They numb their pain with entertainment, busyness, or denial. They tell themselves they've moved on from past wounds when, in reality, they've just learned how to avoid them. Then you show up, and suddenly, all those hidden wounds start screaming for attention. It's not because you're trying to dig into their pain. You don't even have to. Your energy, your presence, the way you carry yourself, it shines a light on everything they've been trying to suppress. Maybe it's the confidence you have that highlights their self-doubt. Maybe it's your honesty that exposes their habit of lying to themselves. Maybe it's your ability to walk away from toxic situations that reminds them of how trapped they feel in theirs. Whatever it is, something about you activates the very things they've spent years trying to avoid. Most people won't see this as an opportunity to heal. Healing requires them to face their pain, and that's the last thing they want to do. Instead, they look for something, or someone to blame. And that someone is usually you. They'll convince themselves that you are the problem, that you are the reason they feel uncomfortable, that if they can discredit, reject, or push you away, they won't have to deal with the emotions you've triggered. It's easier for them to believe that you're arrogant, difficult, or full of yourself than to admit that the real issue is inside them. But here's the truth. They were always carrying these wounds. They were always battling these insecurities. You just happened to be the one who unknowingly exposed them. And instead of thanking you for revealing what needs to be healed, most people will resent you for reminding them it exists. Number 8. You are an unwanted teacher. Lessons people don't want to learn. Nobody likes being taught a lesson they didn't sign up for, especially when that lesson forces them to change. Most people think they're ready for growth until it actually demands something from them, until it means breaking toxic cycles, letting go of outdated beliefs, or facing the truth about themselves. That's where you come in. You're not here for surface-level conversations or to make people feel comfortable in their stagnation. You're here to wake them up. But waking people up is a dangerous job. Growth is uncomfortable, and discomfort makes people defensive. Instead of seeing you as a guide, many will see you as a threat. They'll convince themselves that you're the problem, because accepting your presence as a lesson means admitting that something in their life needs to change. And most people aren't ready to do that. They'll mock you, dismiss you, or twist your words to make themselves feel better. Some will even go out of their way to turn others against you, desperate to avoid looking in the mirror you unknowingly hold up. It's not that they actually hate you, they hate what you represent. A shift they're not prepared for, a truth they've been avoiding, a reality check they never asked for. And the irony? The harder they resist, the more they prove your presence was necessary in the first place. Because if they were truly at peace, you wouldn't bother them at all. But they do react. They do lash out. They do try to discredit you, not realizing that in doing so, they reveal exactly what needs healing. You were never their enemy. You were the teacher they weren't ready for. And instead of learning the lesson, they threw the textbook at your head. Number 9. You trigger a war between their higher and lower self. Every person you meet is carrying two versions of themselves, their higher self, which craves growth, truth, and evolution, and their lower self, which clings to fear, ego, and comfort. Most people live somewhere in between, swaying back and forth depending on their mood, their experiences, or who they're around. But when you step into their life, that quiet internal struggle turns into an all-out war. Your presence awakens something in them. It stirs their higher self, reminding them of who they could be, of the strength, wisdom, and integrity they've been ignoring. For a moment, they might feel inspired by you, drawn to your energy, even uplifted. But then their lower self notices what's happening, and it panics. Because growth means discomfort. It means leaving behind bad habits, breaking cycles, and taking accountability. And the lower self hates accountability. This is why some people seem to love you one moment and despise you the next. Why they'll admire your strength but then resent you for it. Why they'll act like your friend, then suddenly turn on you without warning. It's not really about you. It's about the battle inside them. The higher self wanting to evolve, the lower self fighting to stay in control. Most people don't even realize they're at war within themselves. All they know is that something about you makes them feel conflicted. They feel drawn to you, but also defensive, inspired, but also insecure. They might lash out, ghost you, or try to bring you down, not because you've done anything wrong, but because their lower self is fighting to survive. You are not the war. You are just the battlefield. The moment they met you, they were forced to make a choice, rise into their highest potential, or sink deeper into their own shadows. And how they treat you tells you exactly which side is winning. Number 10. You are an emotional litmus test, showing who's ready for growth. People think they know themselves. They believe they're strong, wise, and emotionally mature, until they meet someone who challenges that belief. That's where you come in. You are an emotional litmus test. The way people react to you exposes where they really are on their spiritual journey, whether they're truly growing or just pretending. Those who are self-aware will recognize your energy immediately. They'll feel a sense of alignment, even if they can't explain why. They won't see you as a threat because they've done the inner work. They've faced their insecurities, acknowledged their flaws, and taken responsibility for their growth. Instead of resisting you, they'll feel drawn to you, knowing that your presence confirms they're on the right path. But then there are those who aren't ready. They might think they are, but when confronted with your energy, their reaction tells a different story. Their unresolved wounds flare up. Their ego kicks into overdrive. They feel exposed in ways they can't articulate, so they react the only way their lower self knows how, by attacking, resisting, or trying to bring you down. Some will gossip about you, trying to turn others against you. Others will mock you, downplay your wisdom, or act like you're the one with the problem. But what they don't realize is that every action they take is a direct reflection of them, not you. This is why you don't need to question your worth when people react negatively to you. They are simply revealing their own level of growth. It's like handing someone a test they didn't know they were taking. The spiritually mature will pass with ease, while the unprepared will panic, lash out, or walk away. You don't expose people. You don't judge them. You don't force them to do anything. All you do is exist, and in that existence, people unknowingly grade themselves. Whether they rise or reveal their weaknesses is entirely up to them. Number 11. You are their karma's last warning before consequences hit. Some people think they can outrun karma. They lie, manipulate, destroy, and take without consequence, believing that because they've gotten away with it before, they always will. They assume life works on their terms, that their actions exist in a vacuum. But the universe doesn't forget. It only waits. And when you show up in their life, it's often the final moment before their time runs out. You are not their karma. You are their last chance to avoid it. You are the warning sign, the flashing red light before the train wreck. Something about your presence gives them an opportunity to change, to make a different choice, to stop the self-destruction before it's too late. If they listen, they can shift their path. If they ignore or attack you, they only speed up the consequences that were already coming. This is why some people react so violently to you. It's not just dislike, it's desperation. On a deep, subconscious level, they know they're running out of time. They can feel that the window for change is closing, that the weight of their past is about to catch up with them. And instead of humbling themselves and making things right, they double down on their ways. They push you away, mock you, betray you, anything to avoid the truth you represent. But the truth can't be avoided forever. And once they reject the lesson you bring, the universe takes over. Suddenly, things start falling apart. Their relationships crumble, their luck runs dry, the things they relied on stop working. They don't always connect it back to you, but you were the turning point. You were the last door before the storm, and they slammed it shut themselves. Not everyone will listen. Not everyone will change. But that's not your burden to carry. You are not here to save them. You are here to deliver the message. What they do with it is up to them. And once you've done your part, the universe does the rest. Number 12. You break generational curses without trying. Generational curses don't just exist in folklore or superstition. They are very real patterns passed down through families disguised as tradition or the way things are. Trauma, toxic behaviors, limiting beliefs, and destructive cycles get inherited like heirlooms, carried forward by those too blind or afraid to break them. Most people accept these patterns as their fate. They don't question why their family operates a certain way. They don't challenge the pain that's been normalized. Then you show up and suddenly that cycle is no longer safe. You don't have to lecture, argue, or force change. Just by being you, you shake things loose. Your mindset, your energy, your refusal to conform to dysfunction, it disrupts everything they've been conditioned to believe. If they've grown up in a family where love is manipulation, your presence reveals what real love looks like. If they've been raised on scarcity and fear, your energy challenges them to believe in abundance. If their lineage is built on silence, secrets, and suppressed pain, your existence alone forces the truth to the surface. Some will embrace this. They'll see you as a gift, an opportunity to evolve beyond what their ancestors could. You might be the first person in generations to wake up, and those who are ready will follow your lead. They'll break free, rewrite their story, and start a new path for future generations. But then there are those who will fight you like their life depends on it, because in a way it does. Their old life, the one built on dysfunction, cannot exist in the same space as you. They will resist, attack, and resent you. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you represent a shift they're not ready for. Whether they love you or hate you, your presence changes everything. You are the breaking point between what was and what could be. Some will rise with you, others will cling to the past. But one thing is certain. After meeting you, things will never be the same. Number 13. You are a test for their ego, and most will fail. People love to believe they are wise, kind, and spiritually evolved, until life hands them a real test. And that test is often you. You don't intentionally challenge people's egos, but your presence alone forces them to prove whether they truly embody the qualities they claim to have. Ego thrives in comfort, in spaces where it is never questioned or confronted. But when someone meets you, their ego feels something it doesn't like. Pressure. Pressure to be authentic. Pressure to confront insecurities. Pressure to embody the wisdom they speak about instead of just performing it. This is where most people fail. Because it's one thing to say you're humble, enlightened, or confident. It's another thing to prove it when standing next to someone whose presence makes you feel small. Those who are truly evolved will embrace you without resistance. They will see your energy, your strength, and your wisdom, and instead of feeling threatened, they will feel aligned. These people have done the inner work. They understand that someone else's greatness does not diminish their own. But the majority? They won't handle it well. Their ego will scramble for control. They might downplay your success, act passive-aggressive, or suddenly turn cold. Some will even convince themselves that you are arrogant or too much, because admitting that their own insecurities are the problem would require growth they're not ready for. This is why you've probably seen people act one way in public, preaching love, humility, and positivity, only to turn jealous, bitter, or competitive the moment they're around you. Their reaction is their true nature revealed. They were never as enlightened as they claimed. They were just comfortable in spaces where they weren't challenged. You don't have to expose anyone. The test happens naturally. And most people will fail it without even realizing they were being tested at all. Number 14. You are a walking reminder of what they could have been. There's a version of themselves they once believed in. A version filled with purpose, courage, and limitless potential. But at some point they chose comfort over growth, fear over risk, approval over authenticity. They abandoned the path their soul craved because it was easier to blend in, to settle, to follow the script society handed them. Then you walk into their life, and without even trying, you remind them of everything they could have been. The fire they let burn out, the ambition they buried, the strength they never developed. You are living proof that another path was possible, and that realization is unbearable for many. Instead of seeing you as proof that they too can change, they see you as a painful reminder of their own betrayal. Some will resent you, even if you've done nothing to them. They'll mock your confidence, undermine your success, or try to discredit your journey. Not because you've wronged them, but because your existence forces them to face a truth they've spent years avoiding. It's easier to tear you down than to admit they gave up on themselves. The hardest part? Some of these people will be the ones closest to you. Friends, family, co-workers, people who once supported you until you became a mirror they couldn't stand to look into. You didn't change, they did. The moment you outgrew the version of you they were comfortable with, they had two choices: rise with you or resent you. And most chose resentment, but their reaction is not your burden. You are not here to shrink for their comfort. You are here to become fully and unapologetically. Whether people love you or hate you, one thing is certain: they will never forget you. Because you are not just a person in their life, you are the living proof of the road they could have taken. You were never just another person passing through. You were a shift, a test, a mirror, a catalyst. Everywhere you go, you stir something deep in people, whether it's admiration, inspiration, resentment, or fear. And that's because you represent something bigger than yourself. You're not here to simply exist. You are here to awaken. Some will love you for it. They'll see you as a light, a sign that they too can break cycles, evolve, and become who they were meant to be. Others will despise you, not because you've wronged them, but because your presence reminds them of the work they refuse to do. You will be misunderstood, resisted, and sometimes even betrayed, not because you are the problem, but because you force a choice, growth or stagnation. And most people would rather fight you than fight their own limitations. But here's the truth. You don't need validation. You don't need people to understand you. You don't need everyone to embrace what you bring. Your job was never to be accepted. It was to be, to show up, to shift the energy, to deliver the lesson, and to leave, knowing that whether they rise or fall is entirely up to them. The ones who are meant to receive your presence will. They will meet you with open hearts, open minds, and open souls. And the ones who aren't ready, they will reject you, but even in their rejection, you will have left a mark they can never erase. So walk forward, unshaken. You are not just a person, you are a divine disruption, a force of change, a walking karma. And whether they love you, hate you, or fear you, one thing is certain, they will never forget you. If this message spoke to you, if it woke something up inside you, then this is just the beginning. There is so much more to uncover, so many deeper truths to explore, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. So make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. Hit that like button if this resonated with you, and drop a comment below. Let me know what part hit the hardest. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video with them. You never know whose life you might change just by passing this message along. This is more than content. This is a movement. And you are part of it. Let's keep waking the world up, one truth at a time. God bless you.